Imagine this, okay. Your phone rings. It's your teenager. And immediately, your heart sinks. They sound out of it, like maybe even scared in their words. They're all jumbled. And then nothing. Dead silence. It's a parent's worst nightmare. And for Teddy Kingbird, that nightmare, well, it became all too real on October 21st, 2021. Her 15-year-old daughter, well, she disappeared, vanished from their home in BG, Minnesota. And it all happened after a party while Teddy was working the night shift.
Teenagers, parties, and a missing person. It sounds like a pretty typical runaway case, right? But, I think as we sort of dig into the details here, you'll see Na's story. Well, it's anything but simple. It's a story that really, I think, sheds light on the realities of missing Indigenous youth. It's heartbreaking, really.
So let's dive in, shall we? We've got articles, interviews, police reports, and they're all centered around Na's case. Our goal today is to try and, sift through it all, try to make sense of this whole thing. What happened to Nat Kingbird?
Right. So the first thing to understand is that missing person cases, especially ones involving teenagers, well, they're rarely straightforward. There's always so many factors. Family dynamics, social circles, maybe personal struggles the person's going through. And when we're talking Indigenous communities, well, it's even more complex.
Right. So, okay, picture this. Teddy comes home from work, right? And her house is, well, it's full of teenagers. Some of them even passed out. Sounds like the party got a little out of control.
Yeah, and that's kind of where things get a little cloudy. We know Nay and I and a friend left the house and ended up at a nearby trailer park. They snuck into one of the trailers. But when the homeowner came knocking, Na took off right out a window. And get this, she left her phone behind.
Hold on. She left her phone. That's strange. I mean, why would a teenager these days leave their phone? Like intentionally leave their phone behind?
That's the thing, right? It's one of the first things that, raises a red flag. It's not typical teenage behavior. It's like, did she panic? Or was this planned? I don't know.
So this trailer park, I mean, this becomes a pretty crucial location, right? It's the last place anyone actually saw Na.
And, it's not just any trailer park. It's close to a major road, the one leading out of BG. So that opens up a lot of possibilities. Could she have hitched a ride? Was she forced into a car? And then there's those woods, right? The ones surrounding the park. What about those?
Hang on. Doesn't this sound familiar? I mean, remember Jeremy Jourdain, the teenager who disappeared 5 years ago?
You're talking about the case that also started with a party, right? And ended with a disappearance near that same trailer park.
I mean, the parallels are, they're kind of spooky, right?
Yeah, definitely something the investigators would have looked into for sure. While there's nothing solid connecting the two cases, I mean, the location, the circumstances, they definitely raise questions.
Okay, so we've got a missing teenager, a party that got way out of hand, a location that's, well, suspicious, to say the least, and, a possible link to a previous disappearance. It's a lot to process. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we need to understand Nea, right? What was she like?
Right. And from everything we've gathered from her family and friends, she sounds like a really good kid. Vibrant, caring, always looking after her siblings, the responsible one. She was close with her mom, Teddy, although, they had their disagreements like all mothers and daughters do, right? And she identified as Two-Spirit.
Two-Spirit. Can you break that down a little for folks who might not be familiar with the term?
Sure. So Two-Spirit is a term used by some Indigenous folks to, describe individuals who embody both masculine and feminine spirits. It's a little more complex than just a simple gender binary.
So how does Na's Two-Spirit identity fit into all of this?
Yeah. Well, it's a key part of her story, really. Sadly, LGBTQ plus youth, especially within Indigenous communities, they're more likely to face violence and go missing.
Man, that just that adds another layer to this, doesn't it? It's already a tragic situation, and well, this just makes it even more so.
Yeah, it does raise concerns. Was Naj targeted because of who she was? It's a question we have to consider.
So, okay, we're getting a better picture of Na now. Responsible, close to her family, identifies as Two-Spirit, and she vanished under, well, what seemed like pretty shady circumstances.
Yeah, and don't forget about the kids at the party, right? The ones at Na's house that night. One of them ended up in the hospital. Alcohol poisoning. That tells you something about the kind of environment Na was in.
Right. It's not just some innocent teenage gathering, is it? It feels like there's a darker side to this, and we need to consider that.
Absolutely. I mean, was this just, kids being kids, or was there something else going on, something more dangerous?
It's a question we need to keep in mind as we, keep going with this. Now, you mentioned family dynamics earlier. Can you tell me more about Na's relationship with her mom, Teddy?
Sure. Well, from what we know, their relationship, well, it was complicated, like a lot of mother-daughter relationships are. They loved each other, obviously.
Yeah.
But they also had their clashes, their, moments of tension. It
Yeah.
happens.
What about the rest of her family? Siblings?
Yeah, she's got siblings, older and younger, seemed like a close family, but, every family has its issues, right?
Right. Okay, so we've got a better sense of, who Na was and the family dynamic. But what about the police? How did they react when Teddy told them Na was missing?
Well, that's where things get a little frustrating, honestly. It seems like there were some delays, some crucial delays in the investigation.
Delays. Wait, why?
Okay, so when Teddy first reported Na missing, she mentioned that she thought Na had run away. Apparently, she'd done it before.
So the police, they just figured it was another runaway case.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, there's this common idea that teenagers who run away, they're just being rebellious or difficult.
But as we've seen, there's a lot more to this story than that.
Right, exactly. And in Na's case, those initial assumptions, they might have cost valuable time.
I'm sensing a pattern here. A missing Indigenous teenager, a family situation that's, complicated, and a police response that was maybe, I don't know, held back because of assumptions and delays.
Yeah, it's something we see a lot in these cases. And it makes you think about the bigger issues, the systemic issues around missing Indigenous people.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But we can't lose sight of Nas. We're here to uncover her story, to figure out what happened, and to bring attention to her case.
Absolutely. Her story needs to be told.
We'll be right back after a short break to keep digging into the disappearance of Na Kingbird. And if you're hooked on this case, hit that subscribe button to get all our latest episodes. We cover a lot of fascinating stories, and trust me, you don't want to miss out.
A lot of people think they think that the police immediately put a detective on every missing person case. But that's not always how it works, especially in smaller towns like BG. They don't have a ton of resources.
So what about Na's case? Did they ever assign a detective?
They did, eventually. But it took a while. See, a lot of departments have this policy where they wait 30 days before they officially say a runaway is a missing person.
Right.
It's just procedure. But for the families, man, it's got to be agonizing.
30 days. That's a long time, especially when you're talking about a child. Imagine what Teddy was going through, just waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting for the police to, really start looking for her daughter.
It's tough, no doubt. And it kind of points to a bigger issue, doesn't it? How missing Indigenous person cases are treated. It's not right.
So after that month, after the 30 days, what happened? Did the police and BG, did they assign a detective to Na's case?
They did. Detective Sergeant Dan Seamag. He's been with the BGPD for a while. He took over Na's case and, well, he hit the ground running.
Good. At least someone was taking this seriously. What did he find out?
Well, first things first. He looked over the initial reports, talked to Teddy and her family again, and he checked out Na's social media, or the lack of it. That can tell you a lot in these cases.
Right. Was she active online after she, disappeared?
Nothing. Crickets. All her accounts, they went dark after that night. And that was another red flag for Seberg. Seemed like she wasn't just hiding out, trying to lay low. Something was wrong.
What about that lead at the trailer park? Did he follow up on that?
He did. And it turned out to be pretty important.
Hang on, how did that even come up again?
Teddy's son, he overheard some kids talking about Na and her friend going to the trailer park after the party. It was just, a random conversation, easy to miss. But he put it together. Thank goodness he told his mom.
So it was a little bit of luck, right place, right time.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Sometimes those tiny details, they end up being huge.
What happened when Seberg went to the trailer park? Did he find anything?
He found the homeowner. And he remembered hearing voices in his trailer that night. Said when he knocked, somebody, probably Na, jumped out the window and ran. Just took off into the night.
Jumped out a window.
Barefoot. That's what the homeowner said. And remember, it was late October in Minnesota. It was getting cold.
So no phone, barefoot, in the cold. Doesn't sound like she planned on being gone very long.
It's another piece of the puzzle, isn't it? Why would she leave like that? So fast. And so vulnerable.
Makes you wonder, was she running from something? Or two something? I don't know.
Exactly, and it shows how crucial those first few days of the investigation are. Imagine if the police knew about the trailer park right away. They could have gotten security footage, talked to people before they forgot, maybe even used search dogs.
But they didn't. They lost time.
Yeah. And unfortunately, time's not on your side in these situations.
It's tough to, you know, think about what could have been, but it must be hard for Teddy. Knowing those delays might have, I don't know, messed things up.
It's got to be tough on her, that's for sure.
So the trailer park. It was a big development. Did it give them any answers? Like real answers?
Not really. It gave them a better timeline of what happened that night, but it didn't tell them why she disappeared or where she might have gone.
Any other leads? Anything else come up?
There was a possible sighting a few weeks later at a Target. A friend of the family thought they saw her, even said she had a black eye.
A black eye. That's not good.
Definitely a cause for concern. Seberg looked into it, tracked down the girl, but it was a mistake. Wrong person.
Another dead end. Feels like every time they get somewhere, they hit a wall.
That's how these investigations go sometimes. Ups and downs, hope, then disappointment. It's tough.
As the weeks went by, and then months, did the police, did they keep looking?
They did what they could. But winter hit, and, well, things got harder. Snow, freezing temperatures. It made searching that whole area around BG almost impossible.
So Mother Nature wasn't helping.
Not at all. It's tough out there in Minnesota, especially in the winter. Searching for someone in those conditions, it's a nightmare.
But Na's family, they didn't stop, did they?
No way. Teddy, she wouldn't let up. A mother's love, right? She rallied everyone, organized searches. They went out there in the freezing cold, trudging through the snow. They were determined to find her.
That's powerful. The whole community coming together like that. They didn't just give up. They took action.
Yeah, it's inspiring. It was during those searches that Na's uncle, Daniel Wind, really stepped up.
Daniel, what did he do?
Well, Daniel's a former firefighter. Organized, methodical. He brought a whole new level of, well, determination to the search. He wanted to find his niece, no matter what.
How did he help?
He brought structure, used grids, maps, made sure they didn't miss any spots, brought in cadaver dogs to search the tough areas. He basically took charge of the whole community's search effort.
It's like he turned his grief into action, used everything he knew to try and bring Na home.
Exactly. He was a real leader when they needed one the most.
Did the searches, did they find anything?
A couple things. At first, it seemed like they might be onto something. They found a pair of women's jeans buried in the snow near that trailer park, and then a sweatshirt. Looked like one Na's grandmother owned. Had some hairs in the hood.
Hold on, evidence. That must have given them hope.
Yeah, for a little while. But it was a false alarm. The jeans weren't Na's, and the sweatshirt. They ran tests on the hairs, but they weren't hers either.
So close. It's gotta be hard. Getting your hopes up like that, only to be let down.
Yeah, it's tough, emotionally draining. For everyone, especially the families. They hold on to every little bit of hope, and then it's gone.
And yet, they keep going. Keep looking. That's incredible.
It is. Love. Hope. They don't want their loved one to be forgotten. That's what keeps them going.
So where does that leave us? A missing teenager. No real answers? And a family. A whole community that won't stop looking. What's next?
Well, as the search for Na continued, her story, it caught the attention of someone who would end up making a big difference. Her name is Lissa Yellowbird.
Lissa Yellowbird. Tell me about her.
Lissa's a well-known advocate, works on cases just like this one, missing and murdered Indigenous people. She's been doing this for a long time. She knows what these communities are up against.
So she's more than just an advocate. She's an expert. What was it about Na's case that, caught her attention?
The same red flags we've been talking about. The way the police handled it at first, the lack of answers, the similarities to Jeremy Jourdain. She saw it all. She reached out to Na's family, offered to help.
I bet they were relieved to have someone like her on their side. What did she do?
A lot. Helped organize searches. Provided support, guidance to the family. Used her platform to raise awareness, get people talking about Na's case.
Wow. Practical help and emotional support. It's amazing how much one person can do.
Lissa's a force of nature, that's for sure. Fights hard for what's right.
What about those similarities to Jeremy Jourdain's case? Did Lissa think they were connected?
She was careful, didn't want to, jump to conclusions, but she knew the parallels were there, urged the police to really dig into it. She'd seen it before, cases that seemed totally separate, but they weren't.
So she wasn't ruling out the possibility of of someone being out there, someone
Yeah.
targeting these kids.
Nope. And she was vocal about the dangers faced by Indigenous women and girls, the trafficking, the violence. The numbers are scary.
It's a tough reality, something we need to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Lissa's work is so important, getting the word out, demanding justice, making sure these communities aren't ignored.
So Lissa, she made a real difference, huh? For Na's case, for her family. What about Daniel, Na's uncle? What did he think about Lissa getting involved?
Lissa, she encouraged him to speak out, share Na's story with anyone who'd listen. He was a little hesitant at first, but she helped him find his voice. He became a powerful advocate for Na and for all the missing Indigenous people out there.
It's amazing. Sometimes tragedy, it can push people to do incredible things,
Yeah.
make a difference.
Yeah. It shows how strong the human spirit can be, even when things are tough.
So we've got a good detective, a family that won't give up, a whole community behind them, and a strong advocate fighting for them. It's a powerful combination.
It is. But even with all that, Na's case, it's still a mystery. Months turned into years, and nobody knows what happened to her that night.
It's a question we're going to keep asking as we go deeper into Na's story. We'll look at the theories, the unanswered questions, and the ongoing search for a daughter, a niece, a member of a community that refuses to give up hope. Stay with us. So we've been going over Na's story, the investigation, all the twists and turns. But even with, her family, the community, people like Lissa Yellowbird, all pushing so hard, the big question still hangs there. What happened to Na Kingbird that night?
I think it's a question that's been on everyone's mind, for years now. Even with all the searches, the interviews, all that time spent trying to piece it all together, it's still a mystery. It really is.
So, okay, let's talk about some of the theories, right? One early idea, and this must have been scary for her family, was that, well, maybe Na wandered off into the woods. Maybe she was disoriented, maybe had a little too much to drink, and just, couldn't handle the cold.
Yeah, it's possible for sure, especially when you think about how cold those Minnesota nights can get. And she didn't even have shoes on when she ran from that trailer. Hypothermia, it can hit you fast. And those woods around Beachy, they're dense. It'd be easy to get lost out there.
It's a chilling thought, A young girl all alone in the dark.
It's not something any parent wants to imagine, but it's a possibility. They had to consider it.
Did the search teams, did they ever find anything that, supported that theory?
They looked hard, but the terrain, it was rough. And all that snow, it would have been hard to find anything. Even as she was out there, the snow could have covered up any trace of her. It's possible.
Right. So that leaves us with a lot of unknowns. What about the idea that maybe she ran away, this time on purpose, and is, hiding?
Her family, they thought about it. But it doesn't quite fit, does it? She was close to her family. She left her phone, her things. It's not really what you'd expect from someone planning to disappear.
And then there's the possibility that she ran into someone that night. Someone who, meant her harm. Someone who took advantage.
It's hard to think about, but given where she was last seen, that area, it's known for, people passing through. It's a theory they had to look at.
And being so close to that highway, the one leading out of town, it raises those concerns about trafficking, doesn't it?
Yeah, investigators definitely looked into that. It's a sad fact, but Indigenous women and girls, they're targets for traffickers. The numbers are way too high.
It's a tough reality. And it makes Na's case even more, urgent.
For sure. And it shows why we need to be more aware, more resources, more support for these communities. They need help.
Did Detective Seberg, did he ever find anything to suggest that something criminal happened to Na?
He hasn't said anything publicly about, specific evidence of a crime. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? Just because there's no evidence doesn't mean there wasn't a crime.
It's a tough spot to be in. So many possibilities and so few answers.
Not knowing, that's the hardest part for families. The questions, the waiting, never knowing for sure, it's a heavy burden.
And still, Na's family, they keep fighting. They haven't given up hope.
They're amazing, really. They've taken their grief and turned it into action. They're out there speaking up for Na, for all the missing Indigenous people, marches, rallies, you name it. They want to bring Na home, and they want to stop this from happening to anyone else.
And Lissa Yellowbird, she's still out there too, right?
Yeah.
Shining a light on these cases, making sure people don't forget.
Yeah. People like her, they're so important. They raise awareness, they push for change, they hold people accountable, they make a real difference.
It's a tough story, isn't it? The not knowing, the waiting, the hoping. As we wrap up this deep dive into Na Kingbird's disappearance, well, There's a lot of sadness, a lot of frustration, but there's also that hope that maybe someday the truth will come out.
Yeah, her story shows us how complicated these cases can be, the unique challenges Indigenous communities face, and the incredible love of a family that just won't give up.
If anyone out there knows anything at all about what happened to Nawa, even if it seems small, please contact the authorities. You never know that one little detail could be the key to bringing her home.
And remember, behind every statistic, there's a person, a story, a family whose world has been turned upside down. We can't forget them. We have to keep their stories alive, fight for justice, and never stop searching for answers.
Thanks for being with us as we delved into this truly heartbreaking case, the disappearance of Now Kingbird. We hope her story stays with you and that you'll think of her. And think of all the missing Indigenous people out there. They deserve justice. They deserve a voice.